Okay, so I guess this is my first emergency pod. I kind of feel like all those douchebags on Twitter now that have to say, "Oh, we have to get right on," but
Emergency pod, emergency
we
pod.
have to with all the siren emojis. But Thomas Andrews, it's good to talk to you. Big news. Meat of the matter. Philip Rivers retires today, and we're gonna get into kind of almost every angle. I'm trying to stay 20 minutes. I'm trying not to go 3 hours, which I know we could easily do, but
Easily.
yeah. So pre-recording, obviously, I mean, literally minutes ago, the first thing we see when we check Twitter this morning, Kevin Acee reports that Philip Rivers retires. And I just been so conditioned at this point of either checking Rappaport or Schefter or some other kind of like insider lead that can break that news. I think just starting off, having Rivers, and we'll go into like his message and what he said personally, like we'll kind of like analyze it. For him to go to AC, who, and quite honestly, he said publicly too, he can't stand the Chargers now. And I understand because it kind of got rid of his role with, the newspaper, the UT, and now he covers the Padres. So it's not a bad gig either. But for Rivers to do that and not go national, I just thought it was such like a surreal moment because we knew this was going to happen. I thought he had one more in him. I mean, so you see the tweet, you see all of the headlines on Twitter, and then you hear it like on the radio and stuff. I mean, what was your initial reaction?
Well, similar to yours, I don't sleep very much often now, as you could tell with a little munchkin I just put on the ground. So I'm up constantly throughout the night. So when I can get a couple hours of sleep in a row, it's nice. So about 6:15, 6 o'clock, I can I'm such a light sleeper. I can hear my phone vibrating, but I just don't want to check it because that means, all right, I'm up. But,
Yeah.
I go to look and it's a lot more notifications than usual. And the first one was Bleacher Report. Breaking news: after 17 seasons, Philip Rivers retiring. Credit San Diego Union Tribune. And to me, though, first of all, for him to not hold some giant press conference, not make it all about him, and to come back to his roots. And yes, you say what you want about AC, say what you want about any of them. He could have gone to Annie Heilbrunn. For all we know, we love Annie, and
Yeah.
we could talk to her out. I mean, we've picked her brain so much, but to go to AC and to break the news just to San Diego alone, I mean, that just goes to show you where his heart still is. And like anybody here from San Diego that badmouths him, go kick rocks, man. Go pound sand. The guy is the epitome of what you wanted in San Diego. The guy will always forever be your last quarterback in San Diego. No matter how much you want to bash the team, he will still always be probably the greatest San Diego Charger. I'd almost want to say just put him above LT, just the pedigree and what he's done and what he meant. And I just got done watching his one of his best friends, Nick Harwick, put out like an 8-minute video on Instagram, like kind of doing a fake press conference, and just some of the names he was talking about, like pretending to look into the crowd. He's like, right now I'm looking at Marcus McNeil, Jeremy Clary, Mike Goff, Chris Dealman, and I'm just like,
Jay Olivier.
He was like, oh, and then we got Igor Oshansky, Stephen Cooper, Sean Phillips, Sean Merriman, the other Sean, and
Jamal Williams.
It's just stuff like that. And he's like Michael Turner sitting back there, Vincent Jackson, and then you got my guy Malcolm Floyd from Wyoming in the back. And I just was like, obviously no one's there, but just the names alone, and it's just like it brings us back. It brings me back so much to just I miss the team so much, and I talk about I love the Patriots stuff, but like Phil is my quarterback till I die, and I will ride and die with him. And it's a very emotional day for us.
No, I agree, and on no basis of comparison can you compare Brady and Rivers. But I kind of, when Brady left New England, I could kind of feel the sting from Patriots fans. Now, when I saw him suit up with the Colts, but the Colts, I mean, we can go into so many different directions, but what you're saying really fast with the Nick Hardwick thing, for him to list off those players. And for those of you that don't know that are listening to this, a lot of people kind of lump California together. They think we're all just a bunch of just hippies that go to the beach and smoke weed. But I mean, there was a distinguishable, demarcation between San Diego to Orange County to Los Angeles to the Bay Area. And they kind of lump, oh, they went to LA. Like, it's no big deal. So people that are from here, I mean, it was a big deal. It's still super fresh. The wounds are still I would say it's still bleeding. I really feel it's going to take over like a decade and like a Padres World Series to really get the focus away from, the Charger discussions.
Sour taste at everyone's mouth.
Oh, I mean, for sure. So it's one of those where you see Rivers, his name on the scroller, and then he, like you mentioned it at the top, he stuck to his roots. And I don't care, and I'm gonna be bitter. I love that he did not mention LA. I love that he says in the press conference, I mean, the thing that Adam Schefter reported, thanks to the fans in San Diego and around the nation that both cheered and booed. I mean, that is just from a literature standpoint, it was just so perfect. It was so perfect for him to do that. And I said, yes, there are haters still with Philip Rivers in San Diego, but you know what? Fuck them, whatever. It's the people that are still behind it, right? I mean, it's just, I'm really, I kind of got choked up. It's an emotional day. And, it's just sad because we heard all day on local sports talk. I mean, normally it is the Padres, and I'm happy because there's plenty to be, to be stoked about and be super like jubilant and excited just because the Padres haven't done a lot and they have all these acquisitions. But, to have the Rivers, saga or the discussion come back, and you mentioned it with Hardwick, you have those players, and we talked about the playoff teams and the woulda, coulda, shouldas, and when they used to be down in Murphy Canyon, practicing, and it was just surreal. And I can't, it's weird because I thought he was going to come back, right? Like, I don't know if you felt the same. I thought he had at least one more season in him.
I mean, I was just looking at some of the stuff. He put up the second highest completion percentage for a season for the Indianapolis Colts last year. You ever heard of a guy named Peyton Manning? He was only off by 0.8%.
Andrew Luck.
So the record was 68.8% completion percentage for a season. Philip put up 68.0. I mean, it's just remarkable. He was that close. Peyton Manning, I mean, his best years were in Indianapolis. So it's just remarkable in that sense. And, I texted you this morning about, let's say, I think it was 10 o'clock. I was at my other job, and I'm just sitting there scrolling through, and I just see the Colts, and it was just, a few different things. Their website's got this giant, nice piece on Phil and thanking him for his 1 year of service and this and that. And even Jim Irsay, is on Twitter saying this guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is, great, and things we can get into in another discussion. But it took the Chargers until half the day to finally put something out. And at first it was just some, hey, thanks, Phil. That was it. And then, throughout the day, they update it with some, a little video that kind of got me a little choked up. But it just seemed, and it just goes back to like his message. He doesn't mention the Chargers in there. Doesn't mention any of the Spanoses. It was nothing but San Diego and the fans.
And I think that struck a chord. It tugged on the emotional, aspect of all the fans. I mean, a couple of years ago, we here, I'll cut this out.
You're good. You're good. You're good. You're good. Keep going.
Thomas is playing Super Daddy right now.
Yeah. Imagine.
What was I saying? 3, 2, 1. No, I mean, there's just so many stories and just so many experiences. And, I would say Tony Gwynn probably had the biggest impact fan-wise in the city, and I don't think that's ever going to be replaced. Philip Rivers is not that far behind. And you know what? He was just a victim of just greed and a selfish owner. I mean, that's really what it came down to. If it was still up to him, he never wanted to leave. How many times did we hear? I mean, when he posed on Jimmy Kimmel, I remember that first season when they moved up north, you could tell he did not want to be there, and it was just so uncomfortable, and he was frustrated. And back to the thing about the social media that you were talking about, I think the reason that there was such a delay on it, I think he really blindsided the Chargers. Like, I don't think he gave any sort of notice to them. I think his sole plan was, you know what? I'm going to tell AC, I'm going to tell a couple San Diego guys, and then I'm going to let everything take care of itself, which is just awesome. I mean, how many times did you see today on ESPN, on Fox News, on CBS Sports, like via, SD Union Tribune, via Kevin AC, and God, is he better than the, LT, as you mentioned? Maybe, because at some point longevity comes into it. We'll finish the conversation a little bit with his Hall of Fame candidacy. Is he worthy or not? But it's 17 years. You're not around in the league for 17 years. It doesn't matter if you're a holder. It doesn't matter if you're a left tackle, a running back, whatever. That's an enormous accomplishment.
17 years plus never missing a start.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
He's the modern day Iron Man. I mean, yes, Brett Favre's got the record, and I mean that one will never be broken. But the fact of what Philip did, I mean, and we look back today is the 13 years to the date. He went into Foxborough and tried to beat the Patriots in the AFC Championship with no ACL
on one leg.
I mean, if that alone doesn't show you like the toughness of that guy, and and he gets a bad rap of being such a shit talker, this and that. The guy doesn't curse. You go in today, they're letting out the best of Philip Rivers mic'd up, and some of the stuff is the most funniest things. You're in there just listening to him talk. And he's just, shoot, man, you'll put that stupid blitz on film, man. That's it. Like, it's so much fun. And it's every defender you talk to, they said, yes, we love Phil, but you hate Phil because if he starts winning, he's going to start John. Even if he starts losing, he's going to start John. And, and it's all good fun. And you could take a guy that come into a game that seemed to hate him. After the game, they meet up. You're like, man, how can you hate this guy?
And then you had the tributes pouring in, whether it was Keenan Allen, Nick Hardwick, and even some of the younger Chargers that unfortunately were also victims of the move, the Austin Ecklers, the Hunter Henrys, the Derwin James, all just respect. I mean, it was pouring in, and you hear these stories and you just kind of forget because it's just not talked about anymore. It's a part of like the city's history that kind of wants to be covered, which I just don't think is really realistic, just considering how fresh it was. I mean, they're going to be, I think it's the fifth season going into this season that they've been away. I mean, that's still new. That is still, I mean, there are so many fans that are still hurt. And, when we were still working at the previous company together, they had the Hall of Fame dinner in San Diego.
Yep.
And Phil, I mean, just delivered a heartwarming speech where I honestly teared up. I remember watching it.
I heard it a couple times on air today, and same thing. Like, just brought back so many like memories. And like, even just if that speech alone just doesn't show you the type of like character and integrity and just like love he had for the city. I mean, he played in LA for 3 seasons. Refused to live there. He commuted every day from San Diego still, and that's down here in, I know, let's say Scripps area, or Rancho Penasquitos and Cathedral area. That whole like that's a hell of a drive every day inside of regardless if it was a mini motorhome or not. Like, and to have to still go home to your family and his wife and still be a Hall of Fame father at home
and play daddy.
Remarkable.
Yeah, that right there. And that's why I think so many people are still attached to him, just because he wore his heart on his sleeve and he was really for the fans, and you cannot discredit that. I mean, at all. And it's hard to put into words. Some people that are going to listen to this are, they're just sucking him off. Oh, he's feeling this. He wasn't clutch. I don't even want to hear that. I just really don't.
I know.
Because if you think about it too, I mean, if we can do this stylistically now, you just think the guy had fucking 5 head coaches, right? I mean, and then his first one is he gets his pink slip after a 14-2 season. I mean, that's where that just goes reflects back on ownership, and you're like, Jesus Christ, like, what are we really into? I mean, because
it seemed like ever since after Marty got fired, every time the rumors of the real coach that should have been hired for the Chargers, they went in a complete opposite direction. So they could have went out and got Rex Ryan. No, let's go get Norv Turner, who had never had any success as a head coach ever, and his only claim to fame was the Dallas Cowboys three-peat in the 90s. Okay, so you go get Norv. All right, so then we fire Norv. There's some other hot candidates out there. Ooh, who's this Bruce Arians guy? He just took Andrew Luck to be the rookie of the year. No, let's go get Mike McCoy, because what he did with Tim Tebow and Peyton Manning. You cannot ever try and ride the coattails of Peyton Manning. I mean, that's Adam Gase just finally lost his job because he's been trying to ride that coattails. And I just feel like you brought in a guy that wasn't ready to lead a group of men like Mike McCoy when all you were latched with Peyton Manning. And you look at things, what could have been, and it's very frustrating because what happens? Rex Ryan brings the Jets in here. They beat San Diego in the playoffs. I don't think they ever played the Cardinals, but you know what I mean? Different division. But it's just things like that shoulda, woulda, coulda. And it's very frustrating because as fans, we were so privy and we're so diehard and we love the team so much that it just is like what could have been, and it's infuriating sometimes. But he stood there, rolled with all the punches, even when the ownership didn't want to pay players to stay. His favorite target. You know what, Vincent Jackson, we'll just let him leave. I mean, luckily they kept Malcolm Floyd around long enough. But it just seemed like they never wanted to give him any targets. And then, for a few seasons, they're like, here's Denario Alexander. This guy's coming off 3 ACL tears.
Yeah.
Zeji Azeratutu.
No, and then back to, I mean, if you were to like classify each, I mean, it was 4 different kind of chapters of his career. And, honestly, post Marty Schottenheimer, those first few years with Norv honestly weren't that bad. I mean, from 06 to 09, they went to the playoffs every year. It was like when LT was finished and went to the Jets, and then, a couple of those players on the really good teams either retired or got traded or just left via free agency. It just kind of seemed like there was like a transition, and everyone wants to point to all the game-ending interceptions in the last few years. Well, how about his game-winning drives, right? I mean, I think he had like almost 36 of them. I would say somewhere around there.
Game-winning drives, tied for 12th all time with Warren Moon and Carson Palmer. 35.
Yeah.
If you put his numbers up to Eli and Big Ben, he's got a better completion, better passer rating, more yards, better touchdown to interception ratio than both those guys as well. The only thing that really matters, though, are the 2 Super Bowls that everyone's going to look at.
And that's, I mean, revisionist history, whatever. Like, if McCree doesn't fumble the ball, which is just permanently cemented in the minds of San Diego fans, I mean, that's the biggest what it could have, should have.
0 for 6 in the playoffs as well for kicks.
Yeah, and that's not even his fault. And of course, he's going to have to shoulder the blame because he's the quarterback. He's going to be the leader of the team, and he handled it every time. And it was sad because a lot of people started painting this narrative about him that he couldn't finish and he didn't have what it takes, and why is he there? And then should they extend him? And I don't know. And I'm just happy for him. I mean, you just got to think too, how many guys do you know that have retired, that have put their bodies on the line, and they have sacrificed so much for themselves and their families and health and everything, and they want to go chill on the beach. They want to live on a golf course and golf every day. He's going to go coach high school football. I mean, that just goes to show he's one of a kind.
And it's great to see him go out and like his last few games down the stretch, he was really good. Playoff game against the Bills, did phenomenal. And yes, if it was his last game, at least he went out and didn't look decrepit like Drew Brees did, And like, I'd love to see him at least go out like on his own terms, looking good and thinking, man, he still could play. We're looking at a guy like Big Ben or even Drew Brees that we're just talking about that look like, man, can they even throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field?
Yeah.
It's funny. Still had an arm, I thought.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny you bring up Big Ben. It's somehow amongst all the scandals, amongst all the injuries, amongst all the walking boots, he's the last man, one of the last men standing from that 04 draft. I mean, that 04 draft itself was a special one. I mean, not just quarterbacks. I'm talking position players that are still like Jason Peters, I think, was in that draft, and other just big names that kind of like had their own, mark.
Matt Schaub just retired too.
Yeah. Same draft. I thought he could have came back, and, I was extremely sad. And, I wrote that piece for the Fan. I was like, dude, glorify or vilify him, you can never ignore him. Like, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And, it's just crazy. I don't know. I think it's just, obviously we grew up with him in a sense. I mean, did the 4 years at NC State, and you got to think back to revisionist history. If Eli Manning doesn't throw a fit and bitches out of San Diego, I think Rivers might have been a Steeler. He might have been a Bill. Like, I mean, we never really know.
Yeah, because there was reports too. The Giants were looking at Big Ben as their guy too.
Yeah.
So like, who knows where Rivers could have even ended up in that draft? He could have been a Steeler, but I think everything worked out the way it could have. And I mean, when we go back and look, regardless of how his playoff runs went or didn't win the big game, we're going to go back and think, man, that 2004 draft class, quarterbacks wise, I mean, even just those big three, one of the best of all time. And so there's no denying that. He'll always have that tie. And you know what? If Ben does still play another year and puts up some more numbers, at least Phil knows he was better than all of them, I think, on and off the field, hands down. I mean, Eli, yeah, there's never any drama with him. He's a pretty boring guy himself. But you look at him outside those 2 years where he made the playoffs, he was never even a top 10 quarterback ever. So
he finished with a 500 record. I think he was like 117 and 117 as a starter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just,
so I mean, it sucks is that they take into account so much playoff stuff, which they really shouldn't. It's kind of like baseball. You shouldn't, because if you look at it in baseball terms, Tony Gwynn Sr. is not a Hall of Famer then if you're looking at playoff numbers alone.
No. But I think with that, baseball is more statistically driven. I just think because every position group has its own stat, and all these nerds now from Harvard have just had some impact. So they're like, oh, let's like create F4 and spin rate, all this stupid stuff. But
well, then they start sending their junk to people in text messages too. Let me have when we get too many nerds in sports.
Talk about Jared Porter.
Jared Fogle.
Exactly. I can't even the Jared scale of creepiness. I'm sorry for people named Jared. No, back on track though. With the Super Bowl rings with Eli and Ben, I mean, look at the organizations they come from. Everyone wants to keep saying again, it was the coaching. No, it always starts at the top. It just the lack of discipline that's been within that organization. I really feel that 14-2 team, that was that they have to be one of the best teams to never win a Super Bowl. And let's say they go or they win. I mean, you're talking about a whole, butterfly effect where they're probably still here. I don't know if Peyton Manning would ever win a Super Bowl. I don't know if Tony Dungy goes to the Hall of Fame. Those are at the top of my head. I don't know. It's interesting.
Because we've talked about that. You beat that Patriots team. Indy has to come to San Diego, where Peyton Manning never played well.
Never.
And then you played a terrible Bears team in the rain.
Come on. My God. And yeah, and I don't know. It's
and then you look at other things. The Jets, the divisional game against the Jets. Vincent Jackson driving with a suspended license the day of the game, or whatever that. It's just little things like that just always seem to haunt this team.
And then Rivers had to go and pick him up. That's the lack of discipline that I'm talking about. They're not doing that with the Giants. They're not doing that with the Steelers.
Antonio Cromartie doesn't want to make a tackle inside the hole and let Sean Green go 50 yards for a touchdown. I mean,
God, that was another.
What about the overtime game on Christmas with Darren Sproles beating the Colts, or leading the Chargers a comeback win to beat the Colts and having to get knocked out, but then Billy Volk coming in. I mean, it's just so many great things he did. But of course, everyone's only going to remember, down a score to under 2 minutes to play. Here comes Phil Rivers.
And that's the thing. And everyone's just so hell-bent on social media. They don't do their homework enough and go back to the mid-2000s and early 2010s when he did lead drives to winning scores. He did make big plays. He could make those hard throws. And, it just goes to show that I thought the support today, obviously sports talk radio here in San Diego, and then just on social media, he was well respected all in the game. And just everything he brought to the table. And there was just no doubt in my mind every Sunday, even when I knew that we weren't a good team and we're outmatched, that he wasn't going to, go down without a fight. And he brought that every time. He always had the energy. Somehow, like you said, when he was mic'd up, it was hilarious. Some of the one-liners he had, and they were G-rated.
Like that's got to be really deflating as you're a defender when you're getting like shit talked by a guy from like the Disney Channel essentially, and
Yeah.
it's working. He's getting in your head, and you're getting really annoyed by it because he's telling you, "Oh man, y'all stink. You stink. Like you're pathetic. Like
You're a horse
really gets
mess.
fired up. You know this Rivers guy. We got it. Yeah, gracious to Pete.
Well, I think, I mean,
I just think today. I was gonna say, I just for whatever thing everyone wants, yes, today's getting a lot of love. Later on we're gonna probably find everyone, oh, he still wasn't that good. But the NFL today lost one of the best characters, personality-wise, of all time. I mean, we're never gonna see another Phillip Rivers type player, and I think they don't appreciate that yet. I mean, hopefully, I can explain maybe in 5-6 years when he's eligible for the Hall of Fame, or 5 years, maybe when he's old enough, I can say, oh, Fitz, man, if you could have only seen him play, man. Or people, oh, what a terrible throwing motion. I know, but I saw so many great throws though. Or it just,
well,
it's
let's pivot to that really fast. So, first year is eligible 2026, which is just fucking crazy to say. I'm sorry, seeing these names that are on the Hall of Fame finalist lists is like with the names that I watched growing up. I feel like I'm dating myself now,
I
but
know.
is he a
It's
first
like
ballot?
Madden from 2004.
Right, exactly. Ray Lewis or Michael Vick on the cover. Is he a first ballot?
My heart says yes, but my brain says no. I think it's going to take a few years. It may take one of those years where there's not too many big name guys in there as far as quarterbacks wise. Because, all right, let's say Drew Brees does retire. Brees is getting that first ballot quarterback one.
Yeah.
That's hands down because he's got, he owns majority of a lot of the passing records. He's got that one Super Bowl, and that's all that matters. I mean, he turned a whole city around because he left. But I think Phil deserved. I mean, top 5 all time. I mean, the numbers don't lie. I mean, yes, he came in. He started at the beginning when like the league started changing around. But I'd say now the league is so much more of a passing game than when he came into the league. I mean, because for the first few years, he still handed the ball off to a Hall of Fame running back, and that was the majority of his game. He wasn't throwing the ball 30, 40 times a game. And I mean, it slowly started to transition. I'd say once either Mike McCoy or even the end of Norv years that really he just started chucking the ball so much more. In 12 4,000-yard seasons, that's second most all time to only Peyton Manning, but still that stuff does come into account at some point. And if we're going to say he wasn't one of the best at his position throughout his career, 8 Pro Bowls in a 12-year span, that's pretty remarkable.
Well, I think there's a lot of intangible stuff that it can't be measured. I liken it to the example of, you can't go outside and fucking pluck a franchise QB off of a tree. Like, it's just not easy. I mean, look at the Cleveland Browns, for example. I mean, spent years in mediocrity, just dabbling, trying to find the right quarterback. You see that now with so many teams.
16 quarterbacks in 10 years.
Yeah.
Joe Thomas went through 16 guys in his whole career. I mean, that's remarkable. And then we have a quarterback that doesn't miss a snap. 240 consecutive starts, 252. I don't know what the two different numbers is. Playoffs or
regardless, it's still
ones.
It's second all time behind Favre. It's just he's in that league with him, Cal Ripken. He had a major surgery on his knee, and he still delivered. And there was never a question. There was never, oh God, he has a shoulder injury, or oh, he has turf toe, or what, just some minor stuff. You just see these guys now that just don't play, and think about it too. The rules now, like the competition committee has slanted it towards an offensive advantage, where Phillip Rivers still played in the era when you were allowed to hit. You were allowed to get pretty physical with the QB, where now if you fucking breathe on them, you're going to get a flag. He was able to withstand that. It's just impressive. I'm the same way. My heart, obviously, I want to say that he's going to be a first ballot. I mean, without a doubt, there's just so much that goes into what he did that not a lot of people can appreciate, because everyone is so stats inflated now, and they just want to see rings and validation. That's not always about that. And that's the difference between, I think, really, just astute fans and analysts and just all the garbage you see on social media. I could see, especially Breeze is probably going to retire. I just don't. I think from a physical standpoint, he just cannot withstand the nature of the game. It's just way too fast.
Yeah. And just, I mean, and we just saw, I still don't think, if you were to look at it, Phil would have been what, 39 going into 40 this coming year if he were to come back and
Yeah,
play.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, he's 39
So,
now.
and I
Yeah.
think, so yeah. And, so I saw, he did lose some of the zip on his fastball. I mean, he's got that herky jerky delivery, but where he was set up, I thought he had a good chance to come back and really take advantage of that division where there's a lot of moving pieces in that division going forward. And like I was just saying, I think it's right now he's taken the right time. He's going to go get a year of coaching under his belt before his oldest son Gunnar gets there at St. Michael's in Alabama.
Yeah.
Who I think they finished
They're
2-8 this year.
Yeah.
I gave him a follow on Twitter. I'm going to start following. I mean, I'm going to follow this guy's career for the rest of my life because he wasn't just a good football player. He's a good person. And he's a role model. I think I would, if I could ever grow up to aspire to be that good of a person, I mean, shoot.
Gummit. Yeah. He passes all the boxes. And it was just it was such a pleasure. I mean, honestly, that's really what it came down to.
If the Hall of Fame takes any of that in consideration, I mean, T.O., because he was a bad person with the media and stuff like that, didn't make first ballot. If they're going to take any of that stuff into consideration, I mean, the guy that was nothing but probably the sweetest person ever to any of the media, I mean, that stuff's got to go into detail, right? I mean, if we're really going to take into that stuff into consideration.
No, character evaluation's huge. Like, he never got arrested. He never hit his wife. He was always never missed a game. Already got that. Just off the field, he gave back to the community. He has been loyal to a community that basically more than half of them probably have turned on him due to something completely out of his control. I think the voters have to do that. There's going to be a bunch of older dudes that are going to meet in 5 years that are going to put that into account. I think I trust it. First ballot, it's tough. I would say by second for sure. I mean, statistically, you cannot ignore that. And that's a result of him being so just physically able and on the field like that. You won't see that again. Yes. You will.
And it's you almost say he didn't die, but it almost feels like that because like I keep saying, the NFL is losing one of its best colorful characters in the last, 2 decades. And it's going to be sad when, we don't get to watch Sundays and it's, here we go. Witching hour. Where's Phil? What TV, what box is he on? And here we go. Because this year, it was so much fun to watch. We still can see he can get it done. You go out and have an 11-win season. I mean, that's amazing. And it's just, and if you look at it, they were the better team against the Bills. A few bad coaching decisions, which has really plagued him his whole career, and missed field goals. They're right back. They could be in the AFC Championship game. I mean, and we're looking at a whole different story. But sad day. But I think also a happy day. I mean, we can't can't be in mourning about it. I like to look at it like
I rejoice.
I'm happy that it's over. Happy that we got to live it.
Happy that happened. No, I can't complain. And, we have to rejoice on what he was able to accomplish. And you find yourself kind of hard. And that's what's interesting too. I mean, like I said, we grew up with the guy. We didn't really have the media stories and stuff. This is more of, hey, this is a guy that showed up every day for work and, was never the flashy. He was on the Gatorade commercials. No, he went to practice and he went home and played daddy. That's all he ever did. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Show up, go to work, and go home.
Yeah, I would say second ballot, maybe. I don't know about first ballot. And you look at some of these names, they're starting to come out now. And then you think of this, I mean, now with the rule extension of guys being able to be, 5+ years eligible, and you think, oh, well, this guy's from the 80s and he's getting in. So I'm not too worried. I think he will. And I mean, quick thing too on the Colts. class organization, just run right. And I think there was a situation where it just worked perfect for him, right? He had a really good offensive line, and he was an old school drop back pocket quarterback that needed a strong running game. And that's what they had. And they could have
Mhm.
beat the Bills. And that's why I think if he wins a playoff game, it might get bounced in the divisional round. I mean, does that influence his decision? Because I still think he can physically play.
And I still think he wants to be able to go out and play. But like I said, I just think he just knows. I mean, like this has got to have been a tough year. Changing teams, you kind of go into somewhat of a new offense, and then COVID hits, and it's like, all
Yeah.
right, so he moves to Indy. He's away from his family, and everything's he's got to do everything digital. Which I'm sure an older guy, it's probably not as fun to have to do everything digitally
No.
and have to be able to bond with your teammates that way. And so I think he went out there and just really went out to show. And I think it was a big like PG fu to the haters in a way that like I still can do it, and I'm going out on my terms. And it's sad because we all still think like, come on, just one more. You don't got one more year in you.
I
But
know. And that's the thing too. It's like, eventually this is going to cool off and this will be back page news. And, I think all of these stories obviously are going to resurface again when he's eligible. And I think for a lot of like the younger fans that they just see Rivers as that turnover prone guy, they're going to hear these
throws
stories again.
funny, can't
Yeah. And
run, the slowest guy in the NFL.
yeah, you make, it's a great point. I mean, he's such a colorful character in the history book of the NFL. I mean, you cannot tell the story of pro football without Philip Rivers. He has like a contribution to the story that cannot go unnoticed. I mean,
I
you will
mean,
never
whether
see
it's
anything like him.
the iconic John with Jay Cutler in his first couple years, um, to like that one the clip the latest one of like Yannick Ngakwe tackling him and he threw the screen on him and he helps him
90
up. Yeah.
yard
Oh!
touchdown.
And then you look at
No,
the
and,
ref
and
like,
then
really?
Ngakwe is like, hey, bro, don't talk to me like that. And then Rivers, oh, I will talk to you. I will yell in your ear. And that was just a perfect snapshot as to what he was. And Sean Merriman had a lot of good stories too. I mean, and just like their dominance of the Raiders, and then I mean, they at one point they were the Chiefs. They ran the AFC West, and you would go into every preseason and offseason thinking the Chargers are the team to beat, and
It was
it's
just
just
like, all right,
different.
when do we play Indianapolis and when do we play New England? Those were
Yeah.
and Pittsburgh maybe. Those were always the ones that you always worried about.
Yep.
And then the Titans always ended up being a good matchup for a few years when Vince Young was there.
And he ate too much Cheesecake Factory.
But I mean, just imagine, man, if we see this video, David Baker goes up to that room and knocks on the door. Could you imagine how, like, his Hall of Fame speech, man, would just be just something incredible. And like, if you could pick, I mean, if there was someone you think that would be, give him that induction speech, who do you think he would pick?
Probably Hardwick. I mean,
Yeah,
unless you had, I can't even.
maybe Norv. But like, I just don't feel like he was with like that long. I mean, I just
That's
don't.
what I'm saying. Either probably LT or probably Hardwick. I think he had a really special connection. I mean, I still feel like all those offensive linemen from those good teams, I wouldn't be surprised if they're in group chats together. I wouldn't. I mean, there's just so much respect for the guy and what he did. And, back to the whole LA San Diego thing, it just, a lot of people do not understand like the significance of that situation just because they lump all the counties together. Some asshole on the East Coast or Midwest is going to be like, smell A, it's the same thing. Like, no, it's not. It's not at all. And, obviously with social media and stuff, and you see what they do now, showing love to the Lakers and the Dodgers and the Spark. And it's honestly disgusting, growing up with being a Padre Charger fan, but no, I mean, back to the AC message, really. I mean, we're all over the place. That's why it's emergency pod, but him solely shouting out San Diego. I mean, a part of San Diego is like, wow, like how you gotta love this guy.
And the fact, yes, it came from the San Diego Union Tribune, which had
Yep.
spent years writing good or bad, articles and columns about the guy. And I do think it was great that there's reports, he called Frank Wright earlier this week and was very emotional and told him his decision. and that the Colts are super happy that, he happened to tell them now. So, early in the off season. So now they can look into what their future is.
Just class
And
act.
I just think there is one little thing that I definitely think he did catch the Chargers off guard. And the fact that they didn't really probably have a personalized message was a slight kick in the groin for them from him, but in the most nonchalant way. I'm still not happy with what happened because unfortunately, man, the Chargers, are they ever going to have a Ring of Honor again? I mean, it's not their stadium to even put things up. And there's not going to be any place even here in town anymore that is going to have some place that we can go and give tribute to all of our San Diego Chargers. Because if Phil does go in, I hope he would go in as a San Diego Charger.
Well, that's an interesting thing too, because one of the I think Isaac Bruce is already in, but I think Torrey Holt is on the ballot this year. I mean, he obviously goes in as a St. Louis Ram. You can't rip that part of his history in the game away from him. And I think this is the same with Phil. I mean, he was, the umbilical cord to Sandy. Once that is severed and say in year 3 of him coaching, we kind of just forget. I mean, at that point, there's really no more tie to San Diego. No. It's sad. It really is. I think that's why I think so many fans and us are savoring this moment. It's seeing the media talk about him and hearing these stories and just the connections he made and the impact he made. And, you hear the callers now, they were our age growing up with him. It's oh no, I have a family. You're a perfect example. I have a family now. And it's we watched this guy come up from as a rookie. It's oh, this guy turkey jerky motion. And man, it's something.
Yeah. The NFL lost a good one today. But yeah, I mean, even the same thing, in a few years when Gates is eligible, is he going to be a sucker and go in as an LA Charger? Because, he seemed to really love that LA lifestyle. Again, but it seems it's now that Phil retires, there are no San Diego Chargers left in the NFL. You can still say Bosa and Melvin Gordon because they were drafted as San Diego Chargers, but they're not. Phil, Weddle, and
maybe Ingram. I don't know. Keenan Allen, he spent a decent time in San Diego before they moved, but he's another guy that's really kind of embraced it.
Oh yeah.
Just really fast, last thing to the whole Chargers social media. That's just the era we're in. Technology, smartphones, internet presence. I think everyone says that Dean doesn't give a fuck. I know he reads the press clippings. I know he sees what everyone says here about him. And obviously that's a whole separate fucking conversation. But for Phil to do that, and I think you're going to start seeing these clues kind of unveiled. And it's the writing is on the wall. He is really pissed at that management. And I do think that just because he had such a strong impact on the organization, and look, good or bad, the Chargers brand has been plastered all over everywhere today. So because Dean put out a fucking blah, blah, blah statement, he doesn't give a shit, obviously. But I think the social media team, he was probably what the fuck? Because for hours we chatted, where's it at? Where I don't think they anticipated this.
They were literally 7-8 hours late to the party when it came to that. But again, when they finally did put out some of the stuff, hearing some of the Josh Lewin radio calls, it's just even right now I'm getting goosebumps thinking about some of them, and it's just,
dude, same thing. It's fun times, but
it's just it's a chapter of my life that's retiring too. It feels like, and it's well, now I gotta hang. I was wearing this for the Colts all year. That, you know what I mean. So now it's man, I really got to put all my chapter of stuff away in my life too, because it's this has been the guy I've grown up. End of high school, college. It's my most prominent years learning to drink at the stadium, watching Phil play. Shoot.
Yeah, and that's quick thing. We could go all night. I just, mine was elementary school, you're a little older, into middle school, high school, beginning of college. And then I was in Colorado, watching them. So it was just such a treat for the Chargers just to kick the shit out of Denver every year. I remember there was so many of my friends in school that hated Rivers for just jawing all the time, and I miss it. I miss going to Mile High Stadium and the Chargers going in and winning. You know, obviously except for that stupid hockey league play. I was actually at that game. That was awful. But you know, the other game in 06, the Sunday night game that got flexed where, you know, Darren Williams, RIP, freaking had that pick six right before halftime. We're sitting there 24-7 down at half, and they came back and won. I mean, that's just, you know, it's going
Where
away. And
Igor got ejected in the second half for punching Tom Nalen in the face after he tried to cut him in late.
I forgot about that. Oh my God. Those little things.
I just
And
remember the giant club to the head.
oh God, he was a beast. But you know, good for him. I think he such a class guy. And I'm really curious, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to talk to AC about what happened today, but I mean, that story came up, I saw on Twitter at like 5:30 in the morning. So I'm assuming Rivers probably called him about lunchtime yesterday for him to be able to have time to write that up, submit it to the editors, and then for that to be published on the internet, at least. It's going to be front page tomorrow in the paper, but give him the intel. That's awesome.
Yeah, and like we're saying, I'm glad the story broke from a San Diego news source in San Diego, and San Diego's getting all the national recognition today. Not the Chargers, you know, not the Spanoses. Philip Rivers and his tie to San Diego is getting all the love today, and he deserves everything and more, man. I really hope he does get that Canton call. I cannot wait to see if David Baker knocks on that door one of these days. And I know for a fact, I know Phil will go in as a San Diego Charger regardless. He does not want that LAC on that bust at all. And I just think, you know, and I hope they put a bolo tie on his bust.
Oh, Philip Rivers, 17 years, 60,000 passing yards.
Over 400
go on and
touchdowns. My favorite thing was for him was growing up. You know, you go back and looked at some of these guys' numbers, and you always thought, oh, some of these quarterbacks are really good. But you go back and look. My favorite one to look at was touchdown to interception ratio, and I always thought if you could stay above 2-1, you were good. And Phil ended up with 421 and 209. So better than 2-1 ratio. And I just think, and I mean, I just think that's such good numbers. And I know things are inflated and this and that, but
and that's the thing. I mean, to that stat, everyone just sees his last year and a half with the Chargers where that's not him. He was just surrounded by a bad team in a scheme that was not catered to his skill set, and it showed. And, you know, but we know that's all. That's the most important thing. The people that know and appreciate what he did, that's really all that matters. I tune out all the other garbage that I hear about him. Just fuck all of them.
Yeah. And some of the best stuff today too was seeing other opposing players putting out some of the heartfelt messages. Like I saw Ndamukong Suh, JJ Watt told the story about how Rivers was calling out their defensive linemen and saying that they had their linebackers in the wrong spots for blitzes before plays because he had seen their packages on film. And to the point where JJ was like, oh yeah, I went back and told the linebacker, you're in the wrong spot. I mean, things like that. I mean, Will Compton putting out stuff. It's like throughout the whole league, it's just cool to see, you know, that's when you know you have the respect of your peers, is like when they go out of their way to tell just fun, awesome stories about the guy. And I mean, the guy doesn't need to be talking about himself. I mean, like he's never done the social media thing, and it's just kudos, man. Hats off, the respect kid, you know. Happy for the guy. I hope he gets
happy
that
for him too. And I really feel
I hope we can celebrate him here in San Diego someday, somehow. Whether if he gets, you know, the new Aztec Stadium gets up and he can come down one time and, you know.
I mean, that's the thing.
Something.
I mean, we can end on that. It's just I think he has earned his San Diego ties to where obviously born in the South. And then it's crazy because in that message and in the quotes, he's said, I never thought I would be in San Diego because I didn't know it at age 22, 23. And, you know, this is his second home. I think so. That would be really cool. And I think he's respected enough, even amongst all the haters, just for what he's done. Why not give that to him, you know?
Like we see all these cool murals of T. Gwynn Sr. all around San Diego. I think Phil deserves a mural somewhere. And yeah, It may not be, might not be the most popular thing, but God damn it, man, I want to go see it if it ever done, and I think he deserves his own little like plaque here in San Diego somewhere,
It's at the Hall of
or a
Champions.
street named
So
after him.
I know that's what I'm happy about. But no, Thomas, thanks for hopping on. I just kind of just turned into like just a better conversation more than an emergency pod, as they all like to say. But yeah, sirens going. So timestamp this in history, January 20th, on Inauguration Day, 2021. All the chaos. Philip Rivers still made a way to make news, so super happy. But I'll post this for you, and I'm sure this won't be the last Charger conversation we have.
No, draft's coming up here soon too, so
Got to get ready for that mindset. All right, buddy.
I'll see you, man.